Hi, this is Sarah Isabella, and welcome to the first ever 2017 online Tiny House Summit. Today we're with Community Day presenters Michael and Michelle Nielsen, and they're going to be talking to us about how to find a location for your tiny home. Go ahead and take it away, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Aloha.
Aloha. So, like you said, we're Michael and Michelle. We are students living on the shore of Hawaii, and we're actually finishing up our last semester. Saturdays are. It's called Down to Earth Getaway, and it's a tiny house vacation rental business where vacationers to experience sustainable living in an off-grid tiny house.
And we've been married for about 8 months now, and we finished building our tiny house before we got married, and then we moved into our tiny house the day we got back from our honeymoon. So we've been living off-grid in our tiny house for 8 months now, and we built our tiny house. It's 240 square feet, and it's completely off the grid, not connected to any utilities. And so today we just wanted to tell a little bit about our story and some lessons that we learned.
So originally we actually started in a private nursery. We had an investor who gave some money to build the tiny house as a project to help with a housing problem here in Hawaii. And the landowners were also on board, and we just kind of had a verbal agreement. The nursery that we were on.
That's our house, a little white roof you can see there. But
another angle there. So we were on this property for a couple of weeks, and the landowners got a little nervous about, they just were really unfamiliar with tiny houses, so they backed out of our agreement, and we were left with a couple of weeks to find another place to go. So we went looking around the community, seeing if anyone had land available for us to use. And we came into contact with some local farmers. And we exchanged working security on their farm at night for the space that was available. And here's just a little picture of the farm, a bunch of banana fields and coconut trees, really, really beautiful. And so we were here for a while, another couple of weeks actually. It's kind of crazy. And the landowners, the actual landowners, weren't the farmers. And we came to find out that the farmers were actually leasing the land. And again, we were asked to leave, but this time with 2 days notice. So again, we were kind of scrambling, and we had a verbal agreement again with the farmers, so nothing, no kind of safety net. So we went ahead looking again for another place, and within 2 days the landowner on the North Shore here of Oahu, contacted him, and long story short, he agreed within 3 days to let us live on his land. And here's where we live now. It's on a mountainside of the North Shore. Beautiful property. We live with 25 goats on this property. It's kind of a crazy little story, but what the point of us sharing this story is to actually some things that we did wrong, as you can kind of pick out already what kind of things we did wrong, and also teach you some things that we did right. So hopefully when you are trying to find a place to park your tiny house, you don't deal with the amount of stress that we did. So here are 3 main lessons that we learned. First, have a written contract with the actual landowner. 2, understand the zoning laws of your area. And 3, always have a backup plan.
So said the first lesson that we learned was have a written contract with the landowner. We, in our first location on the nursery, we didn't have a written contract. We just had a verbal agreement that this would be a permanent place for our tiny house. And we thought that was all great and dandy. And we came to find out very quickly that verbal agreements don't really hold up very well. And so back out and put us in a very difficult spot. And sadly, we didn't actually learn the lesson to get a written contract until our last place, because when we met the farmers, we again made a verbal contract. It came time to leave there as well. It was very difficult to work through because there was nothing written. It was all just said. And so once we met our third landowner, we did things the right way. We sat down and we wrote out a full written contract. So just in case something happens, we would always have something to go back to. And we even put a security deposit down, just so just let us know. And then the second point that we learned was understand the specific area. We first built the house. We weren't too worried about zoning law, just with that permanent spot, or what we thought was a permanent spot would be. And it was an okay situation. The laws go, it was all right to be there. Somewhere we start to research where we could actually put our tiny house. We found there's a lot of restrictions. There's RV parks. There's not really any RV parks where we live. And we found that some RV parks allow tiny houses while others don't. So you have to find out the specific rules for that. But overall, the most important thing was finding private land, privately owned land. Dealing with leases and leaseholders it becomes, and so just figure out your area specifically. We found that every single state and pretty much every county has a unique law for tiny, and many of them are a little fuzzy because tiny houses are so new that there's not specific things. You have to think a little bit out of the box. They don't call them tiny houses usually. They call them like trailer houses or sometimes RVs. It just depends on the county. You have to look into their laws specifically. But once you can ask what the laws are, but we found that every ask, you'll get a different answer. And so best source is just to look at the city and county's website. There usually, so just go straight to the source. And this is really and you know all of the laws for that, then very hesitant to allow our tiny house to be on their land because they didn't. And Why is it so slow?
I like the H. We get good reception here.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I can see you two again. I'm still broadcasting, but we can edit this part out. Maybe you can
Okay.
Hey,
try.
sorry about that. Not sure what happened.
That's okay. It just froze and kicked you off. So we'll try to just pull this section out. If maybe you could start again from, you know, the location and some of the laws. I think that's where it just sort of dropped you off. Maybe we can just pick back up there.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So understanding laws for your specific area is essential for many reasons. So once we found out we had to leave our first location at the nursery, we realized we didn't know the laws for our area, for our county in specific. We thought we had a permanent solution, a permanent location. We found we had to do a little research, so we looked into it, and RV parks are one option. RV park accepts tiny houses, so you have to find specific ones. There aren't any RV parks where we're at, so when it came down to us, we found that privately owned land is really the only, really the only way to go. And once you get into leased land, it gets very difficult, very sticky situations. And so this is especially important if you're traveling with your tiny house and moving to different places, finding places that are have the right kind of laws for that zone. So we found that you can ask a lot of people. We asked everyone we knew what the laws were, and every single person gave us a different answer. And so we found that the best place to go to find the real information is just the city and county's website. They have all of the real information, but it's a little funny because they don't usually call tiny houses in their laws. So you have to be a little creative, think out of the box, and do a little searching. They often call them trailer houses or RVs. It just depends. So you have to think a little bit out of the box there. But this is really important, knowing the laws for your specific area. And it really would have given us a lot of leverage when we were looking at places. And we finally did do our research, and it helped us a lot. But it's important because if you know the laws for specifically zone, then when you're talking to the landowners, you can really ease their worries. We found that landowners were very, very hesitant to put a tiny house on their land. And so by knowing the laws, you can kind of ease their worries. And we got really lucky, actually. Our third location on the mountain, the landowner was very knowledgeable with the laws of his land. It happened to be a big agricultural plot. And so he helped us out a lot. He knew all of the laws, and he taught us a lot, and we did our research, and it worked out. But lucky on the last try. It really would have made a difference, though, if we had known all along and been able to explain it and back it up to landowners, especially using the county's website as proof. So that's some of the importance of knowing the laws in your specific area.
And the third point is to always have a backup plan. The first time we had 2 weeks to move. The second time we had 2 days. You don't want to be desperate and stuck between a rock and a hard place in regards to where to put your home. It was a nightmare for us, and we don't want that for anyone, really. And so just things to think about. If you ever really need to move, you have to plan not only tiny house is going to be, but you have to plan for the equipment that's needed to move your house. If you don't have a truck with a hitch to tow the house, or to store all the stuff that's not bolted down to the house, like solar panels or the water catchment system like we had, you kind of have to plan ahead for those things too. So not just that, but something that we unknowingly actually did right and that helped us, even though we didn't have a backup plan, is that we were well networked. One thing that we would suggest to everyone is to talk to everyone about your tiny house. You never really know who in the future could be that person to really save you in the end. And that connected us to the landowner that we work with now. She doesn't have land here on the island. She just happened to know him and happened to know that he was into living sustainably and was even open to something like what we had to offer with our tiny house, and that had this land available. So you really never know who can help you. I would say is to talk to everyone in your community about it, to have their support and just kind of be excited with you about your home and this tiny house movement, really. But secondly, I would say to connect through tiny house social media networks. I'm a part of a couple different Facebook groups with tiny house kind of focuses, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen people post land that's available for renting or parking tiny homes. So there's a lot available. And even just, not even just in your community, if you want to move around, if you're one of those mobile tiny homes, it really opens up your opportunities. And the second thing that we did unknowingly that actually helped adapting to the many times that we have to move was that our house was actually able to adapt on or off grid. And this is important because not every land that can be available for parking will have, you know, connection to septic or sewer or electricity or water. So you have to be able to stand on your own. Now there's nothing available for us. So having that off-grid option was super important and really made it possible for us to have a home we do with the pictures really didn't do it justice. We have an amazing view of the North Shore with the best waves in the world, some say. And it really wouldn't have been possible if we needed to have water flowing into our house from the grid. And so this really just opens up your opportunities.
And one other thing about moving your tiny house, since we had to move it so many times, we weren't expecting this, but power lines, at least in Hawaii, is a major issue. That there are often power lines that are below the 14.5-foot limit, and our house was at 14 feet, which is the maximum allowable. And so there were times when we actually had to lift up a couple power lines, but you want to map out your course first. So when you're looking at possible places for your tiny house, that you drive the way and you look our tiny house, but we found that it was absolutely impossible to get to them because of power lines. So that's just one other thing to think about when you're for your tiny house. These are the 3 things we learned. So contract with landowner, understand the laws for your county and city specifically, and look that up on their website, and always have a backup plan. Be networked and have somewhere else you can go when you need.
Let's help you in finding a place to park your home. And if you have questions, you can always contact us through our website, Down to Earth Getaway. I'm willing to help. This tiny house community is really one where we're willing to share the mistakes and help anyone really have a best experience with their tiny home. Hello.
Thank you so much. I'm sending you guys some questions, but I'm going to ask you some questions as well, just in case the audio on your end is a little weird. Okay. Just wanted to see right now. I did send you some questions, but the first question, and I'm not sure if you said that in the beginning, the video was a little strange in certain parts, but overall I think we can deal with it. Did you build a tiny house that you're living in?
We did build a tiny house. I built it mostly myself, with the help of a couple friends. And yeah, we built the whole thing, mostly we used recycled materials wherever we could, and tried to make, because this was a prototype to try to fix one of the housing problems in our community. And so it's a very simplified tiny house, nothing too fancy.
All right, I think I lost you for a minute. But how long did it take you to build the prototype?
We started building it about a year ago, actually, a little more than a year ago. So it took us about, I would say, 8 months to build it. About 8 months. But
we were going to school full time.
Yeah, we were in school full time. So that was all in my spare time.
Yeah.
And then the 3 weeks before we got married, I was working
down
probably like 90 hours a week trying to finish it. And finally finished it like the day. Took us about, I'd say, 8 months total.
Okay. Because you moved 3 times, what did you learn that you needed to ask or require when dealing with your contract to be on the land? What are a couple key priority things that you had to ask for?
So first is, are they the actual landowner or are they leasing the land? That was a big deal. Another one would be,
I think, was securing you're going to be there. I think really made me want to sit down and write a contract with them is to help both of us understand how long we were going to be there, and that there was some security in us not having to move again. So I think the most important thing for me was definitely securing a specific amount of time that we were going to be there and work for them and help them.
So have you created a work trade opportunity there?
the thing is just, sorry? Hello?
Go ahead, finish what you were going to say.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Did you get it?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. And so, like Michelle said, is securing a certain time period. And the last thing I would say is making sure that their land is zoned just figuring out what zoning their land is. Has a specific law, has specific laws for parking tiny houses. Some allow it, some don't. Some, like for example, you have to move the tiny house every 30 days technically. And so just knowing the specific zoning, that piece of land.
Perfect. That leads me to my third and final question that I typed in there. What key questions, 2 or 3 questions that you would suggest people ask when talking to zoning regulations office about finding a good place or a good space or what's available?
Just the rules about structures, like additional structures on the property. If you are mobile and off-grid, you have a greater chance of kind of fitting in that gray area for a lot of different zoned lands. And so if you need to connect to septic, it gets a lot more complicated. So I would ask what the rules are for a off-grid structure versus
Speak about the tiny house as a mobile, a trailer, instead of a structure, because if it's a structure, it technically needs all the different permit processes, which costs money and takes a lot of time. Whereas if you go through the DMV as a trailer, you're technically just, it's like a car. There's a lot less regulations, and the building codes are for tiny houses in this next coming year. But as of right now, the building code prohibit anything like a loft bedroom because the height of the ceiling is high enough. And so if you call it a structure, you have to be really careful because it's not permitted or even built to code as a structure. Until the coming year, then you can find the new codes. But for now, always refer to it as a trailer house, mobile unit, RV, whatever. Make sure it's distinct, distinctly not a structure. So.
Those are really good suggestions. Thank you. Well, thanks so much, you two, for taking the time to give some really helpful pointers for people that are looking for this. I know it's a popular topic, and I think it'll be really useful for people to have a place to start from and have ways to think about it that maybe they wouldn't have thought about without your experience. So we really appreciate your participation.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, we really appreciate your participation. Thanks so much.
Thank you.